We're joined with Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. He is speaker, author, and rabbi. I want the audience to know that I had invited you on before Kim came on, so it wasn't a response.
Right.
Even though I know you want to respond to that video that came out. And just to give the audience context, Kim Iverson was on the show. And Kim Iverson made an argument that Judaism and Zionism are effectively now the same thing. I disagree with her on that. But I think you can make that argument more forcefully. I will give her argument because I don't think her argument was insane, but I do want to try to give it in the honest way that she was presenting it. And I think her point was whatever Judaism started out to be in its thousands of years of history, that because religions evolve, like, you may have the Catholic Church, for example, may say, okay, well, men can't marry. But that may evolve to a point where men can marry. It may evolve to the point where women can be priests, meaning you may get a new norm in religion over the course and arc of thousands of years as modern times comes in and as those religions try to accommodate, let's say, new norms that are taking place within the modernity of those societies. And her argument basically boiled down to, it doesn't really matter that there may be a section of Jews that reject Zionism. The fact that it's taught in synagogues in the US, the fact that the majority of Jews in the US agree with the premise of that state and what that state is doing, that it has been infected on some level by a political ideology that has fused itself, almost like, grafting something to a bone, to the religious aspect of Judaism, that whatever it was, it has evolved into something that incorporates Zionism into it, that they're inextricably linked. You can't separate them, even if you have some people like yourself that make the argument that these things are separate and distinct, or even like me, that these are different things, that the fact that the bulk of the people go in this direction, it's the bulk that makes the determination about what the religion is, not the minorities.
Okay, so
point on that.
Right. So first, I want to preface my remarks by mentioning that I was on Kim's show once, and it went very well. And I thought that I had communicated what I said successfully, and I'm not sure why she would say what she said. But and she was an absolutely marvelous host, I must add, absolutely marvelous.
I think she's frustrated. If I had to interject, I think she's frustrated.
Okay, so let's take this logically. So first, does this mean that I no longer practice Judaism? If Judaism and Zionism are not linked, I no longer practice Judaism. If they are linked, then those Jews who do not follow Zionism are not practicing Judaism in total. Is that what this argument says?
No.
So you can practice Judaism even if you're not a Zionist.
Yes, I think what she's saying.
Therefore, Judaism does not require Zionism.
But I don't think that's entirely her argument. I think what she's trying to make the point.
But she would agree with that Judaism does not require Zionism.
I think she would say there were some people who were heretics, and heretics may be the wrong word for it. But there's some people.
Am I a heretic? Am I a kufar in the way Muslims would say it, or a kofar the way Jews would say it? Is that what she's saying? Now,
I think she's saying you're a minority.
Okay, a minority is not the same as saying that now something is part of the religion inherently. If we're saying it's part of the religion inherently, that means that I'm not practicing the religion. I just want to clarify what the argument says, so when I answer it, I'll know what I'm answering. Are we saying that now Zionism is inherently part of Judaism, such that if you're not a Zionist, you're not fully practicing Judaism?
You asking me? I think she's saying that the religion evolves, just like any other religion may evolve.
So now that the religion evolved, if I do not practice the evolved version of the religion, am I not practicing the religion in full?
I mean, but come on. And look, I don't agree with her premise on this.
Wait, I'm just asking a question whether to clarify what the argument is.
There are Baptists, there are Christians, there are Protestants. Okay. Even if you go into Muslims, there are Shiite.
So the argument is then not that I'm not practicing Judaism, not that Judaism has evolved, but there has been a branch created called Zionism, that they may be the majority. So, for example, there are Catholics and Protestants, and in the United States of America, Protestants are the majority. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that Christianity has evolved? The Pope would not say so. The Pope would say that we're two different sects. There were always sects of Judaism. There was the Orthodox Conservative Reform, and we have always said that Zionists are a different sect of Judaism, always. I have said it a million times. In fact, I have compared it probably on your show as well to the Pope and the evangelicals. If Christianity has not evolved because there are so many evangelical Protestant Christians, such that now you say, well, the Catholics, at least in America, they are a minority. And therefore, the Pope is no longer a representative of Christianity because there are so many Protestants. Nobody would say that. Nobody has to be a majority. You are fully entitled to say that Zionists, which I do, and I have, and we have for as long as Zionism existed, that Zionism is idol worship and it's a separate religion. You've heard this from me.
Yes.
Okay. So we always knew that. And in fact, there were times throughout history, even in biblical times, in the days of the Bible, in the days of Gideon, for example, where the majority of Jews were practicing idol worship. But that doesn't mean that the Jewish religion evolved into idol worship. The prophets were still preaching, you guys are idol worshipers. And the prophet Elijah told the Baal worshipers, if you want to worship the Baal, then stop being Jewish. If you want to be Jewish, stop worshiping the Baal. And a few weeks ago, at a protest against Ben Gvir in Manhattan, I quoted the prophet Elijah, and I said, Zionists, you are idol worshipers. If you want to be Zionists, stop keeping Shabbos, eat some pork. Those were my words. Okay, those were my words. I was on Katie Halper's podcast, and the clip that she has of me saying eat some pork has, I don't know, over 300,000, well over 300,000 views already. And leave Judaism alone. And yes, we always believed that. Now, the Zionists believe that too. I have in front of me, which I prepared, an article from the Israeli newspaper Israel Hayom, June 8th, 2014. Okay. Social Services Minister Meir Cohen, Israeli minister, irks ultra-Orthodox community by saying, quote, those who don't send their children to serve in the military, the Israeli army, are not my brothers. Now, he's not irking me. I'm happy he said that. Cohen's office issued a statement saying, those that incite against enlisting in the military and do not recognize a Zionist state, a Zionist Jewish state, are not the minister's brothers. Okay? I'm happy he said that. I agree with him. He's practicing a different religion. The Orthodox Jews, whether they're Orthodox, Conservative, or Reform, that believe in Zionism are practicing idol worship as far as I'm concerned. And therefore, listen, Orthodox Jews are a minority altogether, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe Judaism used to be all Orthodox, and then there was the Reform and the Conservative and non-affiliated Jews. So does that mean that Judaism evolved and now Orthodox Judaism is no longer representative of Judaism? How could you say such a thing? We have our beliefs, and they have a different branch. When we say Jew and they say Jew, it's a homonym. So if the Orthodox, who are a minority, well, the religious in general are minority. The Orthodox are a minority among the religious, right? So what's the difference if a new denomination called Zionism came, and now there are many. By the way, it's not nearly as widespread as you think, as I'll show you shortly with hard numbers. But first of all, let's establish this: anti-Zionist Jews or non-Zionist Jews and Zionist Jews. I have always said, this is not a response to October 7th. We have said for 150 years. They are idol worshippers. You have heard this from me. They are practicing a different religion, which has a lot in common with Judaism. Christianity has a lot in common with Judaism. And even Islam has, regarding theology, the conception of God, first cause, necessary existence, not a trinity, has that in common with Judaism. That's first of all. So I don't even understand the argument. But secondly, the facts are not the case. I'm going to draw your attention to a Pew survey. There are two Pew surveys, one in 2013 and one in 2020. The question, amongst others, that they asked was, quote, was Israel given to the Jewish people by God? Okay. Now, all these Jewish synagogues, these Zionist synagogues, what do you think would be the results? Okay, here's the results. In 2013, net Jewish, right? We don't have time to go into all the little denominations. Yes, Israel was given to Jews by God. 40% said yes. 28% said, I don't even believe in God. 5% said, I have no idea. And 27% said, absolutely not. So the majority of Jews did not say that Israel was given to the Jewish people by God. 28% don't even believe God gave it to them. However, the Christian general public, of the Christians, 55% said yes. 40% of Jews said yes. Of the Christians, 55% said yes. Protestants, 64%. White evangelicals, 82%. White mainline, 47%. Still more than the Jewish mainline. Black Protestant, 51%. Catholics, 38%. Okay? Then, you hear that? Now, that's talking about the main idea of Zionism. Now, in 2020, they asked the same question. Okay, now in 2020, net Jewish, do you believe that God gave the land that is now Israel to the Jewish people? It dropped. 32% said yes. 42% said absolutely not. 24% said, I don't believe in God. And 3% said no answer. Okay, and even amongst the religious Jews, only 40% said yes. Amongst the Christians and non-Jews, the numbers were the same. So as far as that aspect of Zionism, the Jews are not majority Zionist, okay? Second, here's the most important part here. The most important part is that even, first of all, the role of the synagogue in Judaism is not the same as the role of the church in Christianity. The synagogue does not decide what Judaism is. A synagogue, there's not even the synagogue, as you say, the church. The whole phrase doesn't even exist. A synagogue is a place where Jews go to pray. That's what it is. A yeshiva is a place where Jews go to learn, to study. Because in America, there was a lot of assimilation and modernization of Judaism, many synagogues became what's called a Jewish center. In fact, there are many synagogues called Jewish center of this or that place. There are synagogues that discuss rabbis at pulpits, more modern. I never did it. My people never do it, who discuss politics. The majority of Orthodox Jews voted for Donald Trump. The rabbis told them, vote for Donald Trump. Now, synagogues, as a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, are not allowed as synagogues by law to promote political candidates. Right. But a rabbi, as a private person, can, okay, because he's not a tax-deductible organization. There are many synagogues that Orthodox that promoted Donald Trump. The majority of Jews, vast majority, are Democrats, right? And they speak about this in their synagogue. Does that mean being a part of the Democratic Party in America became part of Judaism? And they tie it to Judaism, social justice and all of these things. Yeah. Does that mean that Donald Trump became part of Judaism? Many rabbis speak about various political things in their synagogues. And the fact that there's a political thing called Zionism, which is a political thing, and it is spoken about in synagogues. And don't forget, there are two parts to Zionism. There's the part that most Zionists are not even religious,
right?
Including Benjamin Netanyahu. They don't even attend a synagogue. So what exactly part of Zionism? It can't be Netanyahu's Zionism, not Herzl's Zionism, not Ben-Gurion's Zionism. So what Zionism actually became part of Judaism? Well, what part of Zionism is spoken about in synagogues? You know what part? Not the part that says, which is a mainstay of Zionism, that Jews should move to Israel. The rabbis are not telling the Jews to move to Israel, not rabbis from America, not the rabbis in the United States of America. That's not what they're saying. They're not. These rabbis are living in America. How could they be Zionists in that sense? They're talking about the politics between Israel and Hamas, or Israel and the Palestinians. There are many people in America, not only Jews, not only Zionists. Our president of the United States, Biden I'm talking about, was 100% behind Israel. He called himself a Zionist. Okay? Right. Okay, so there are plenty of people in America and the majority of America, at least it was, now I'm not sure, at least one, supported Israel politically. Right. And there's this political idea, which is false, but there's this idea that Israel is necessary for the safety of Jews. In case there's a Holocaust, where are you going to run? Who's going to defend you? That has nothing to do with religion of Zionism. That has to do with simple politics and safety. Now, they're wrong, but it has to do with politics and safety. And that, for the most part, is the Zionism that's discussed in the synagogue. We must support Israel, or Jews in Israel will die. Hamas will destroy all of Israel. Israel is surrounded by enemies. Iran wants to blow up Israel. You just had a session about Iran, right? Let me ask you, the 8,000 or 9,000 Jews in Iran that are now in danger of being bombed by Israel, right? Are they now Zionists because they're Jews and now Judaism has evolved?
I know, but I think, just to be clear, I think her point is, if you're trying to decide what is the preponderance of a religion, for example, Christianity.
So what's the preponderance of Christianity?
I don't doubt. Well, just to be clear. Well, wait, I don't doubt that you can't have sex of a religion. Agreed. 1,000% agree, right? My mom is a Christian. She will practice something different than someone else who also may call themselves a Christian. They're both Christians. Agreed. You don't have any disagreement there. I also agree with you that you can have sex, and that sect can be considered Orthodox Judaism, et cetera, et cetera. I think Kim's main point was that if the overwhelming majority of the people in the United States are backing and supporting Israel, meaning Jews.
Politically,
right.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, the politics and the religion become one. Like, for example, Islam. You can make an argument that there are aspects of Islam that are also political. Martin Luther King ran a political movement, even though he was a religious figure. They fused. They weren't separate and distinct. This idea that we want to feed or we want people to be treated equally. Those things are political arguments, even though they were coded in a religious context.
So question, the majority of, let's say, I think it's true that the majority of Christians all over the world are Catholic, right?
I'm not sure, but maybe.
Let's say it's either Catholic or Protestant, take your choice. It doesn't matter, right? Let's assume Catholic, okay? Just let's assume. If that's true, does that mean Christianity has now become Catholicism? The majority of Jews are not religious. That means Judaism has become a non-religious thing, right?
Yeah, it becomes cultural at a certain point, right?
It becomes what?
Cultural at a certain point.
Let's say it becomes cultural. So now are you going to say that now Judaism is cultural and the religious Jews are not really models of Judaism? No, it's a different religion for all practical purposes. If you want to say that there's a political element that has entered Judaism in Zionist spaces, right? And again, you need to identify what that thing is, because there is no majority of Zionism that is common denominator between all of these places. As you saw, there are more Christians that think God gave the land to the Jews than there are Jews in the United States of America. That's Pew survey. By far, there is more Christians than Jews. So maybe Zionism became part of Christianity. How about that? What do you say now? Zionism became part of Christianity because a majority of Christians believe that God gave the lands to Jews. So the Pope, the Catholic Church, all of these people, their religion has now been corrupted because a majority of Christians now believe that God gave the land to the Jews. You're not going to say that because everybody is because whereas by Christianity, there's something called the church that decides something. Judaism is never decided by a majority. If it would be, religious Jews wouldn't be the majority. Orthodox Jews wouldn't be the majority among the religious. Zionism is, and Republican Jews would not be real Jews, or would not be. Vast majority of Jews have always been Democrats. They have always been liberal or Democrats. The vast majority. We're talking about 70 or upward of 70%. Okay, does that mean that now being a Democrat became part of being a Jew? The rabbis in the synagogue speak about that. All these democratic values, and it's relevant to being Jewish because the idea of left-wing liberalism is to treat everybody equally, and that's a very important thing to Jews who were never treated equally. In the exact same way that Israel is important to Zionists because they believe it's important for the safety of Jews. The Democrat Jews believe not only is it important for the safety of Jews, but also ideologically, being a liberal is their ideological position. So being a Democrat is more connected to being a Jew, in theory, for the Jewish Democrats, than being a Zionist is to the Zionist Jews, the ones that believe it's just safety.
Just so I'm clear, your point is these are just different religions under one umbrella.
That's
like
number one.
The same way that Christians.
Yeah, that's number one. And number two, it's different religions, different sects. We've always said that. Number two, it's a political position, not always. It's complicated, but usually it's a political position, like being a Democrat, like voting for Trump. That doesn't make it part of the religion. That means that there are a lot of Jews that are Democrats. That doesn't mean being a Democrat is part of being a Jew. Okay? Right. There are Jews that vote for Orthodox Jews voted for Trump, mostly. Non-Orthodox Jews voted for Harris, mostly.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do. Yes, Jews have political interests, and they could believe that their political interest is communism. Many Jews believe that, correct? Because again, it treats people equally. If you like communism, that's the idea, correct? There are many Jews that believe in Zionism. Jews are concerned about their safety. Me, I don't believe Zionism. Zionism puts me in danger. I don't believe in it at all. I don't believe it's practical and certainly not part of my religion. It's idol worship. But there are Jews that have various political beliefs, primarily because of anti-Semitism, which is racism isn't exclusive to Jews, but anti-Semitism. And I know somebody in the comments is going to write that there are other Semites besides Jews. So let's rephrase it. Jew hatred is unique to Jews. So Jews are concerned about that. How they deal with that doesn't mean that's part of their religion. Thirdly, that the Jewish religion is not like the Christian religion. There is no the church that decides what the religion is. The religion was given to Moses on Mount Sinai, and it does not evolve. Throughout history, we've had idol worshipers in the days of the prophets that say that the majority of Jews worshipped idols at certain times. And the prophets, there are false prophets, but the true prophets said, you are not practicing Judaism. So they try to kill those prophets. Today's idol worshipers are like today's Zionists are like the idol worshipers in those days. They were the Tzaddukim. There were the various different sects throughout history. They are Jews for Jesus. If the majority of Jews would become Jews for Jesus, does that mean now I'm not really practicing Judaism? Does that mean Judaism evolved? In fact, as you surely know, at the beginning of Christianity, it was a Jewish sect, right? Jesus was born a Jew, right? It was a Jewish sect. They believe, and there are Jews today, Messianic Jews, that don't believe in Christianity. They don't believe Jesus is God, but they believe Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. Okay,
Hmm.
there's a sect like that. One cannot accuse them because they're a minority of not being real Jews. One
Right.
can say, I can show you the texts that prove you're wrong, and they'll come and they'll say, no, we'll show you the texts that we're right. And that's
Right.
how Judaism is determined. If the majority of doctors on this planet decided that social distancing is a way to manage COVID, that doesn't mean the science of medicine says that. The science of medicine is judged objectively by the science of medicine, and the science of Judaism is not judged. There is no church that gets to decide what Judaism is.
I see. You're saying they're different.
Secondly, the numbers are way, not only the Pew survey. Let's just take what we observe. The largest community of Jews in the world are the Satmar Hasidim.
Okay.
They are the biggest anti-Zionists in this country. They have, I sent you some clips. We didn't have time, I guess, to play them. I spoke for them we filled the Barclay Center in Brooklyn. They play basketball games over there. We filled the Barclays. There are about 20,000 Jews over there, approximately. Anti-Zionist rally. Another group of them filled the Nassau Coliseum. There are about also, I don't know, maybe 15,000 Jews there. There were rallies, anti-Zionist rallies that involved that group and others as well. 40,000 Jews came out in Foley Square. Now, amongst these Jews, there are those that'll say, well, most of them will say, no, we hate Hamas. Hamas are terrorists, right? And some people will say, oh, look, see, they're Zionists. They're pro-Israel. They will say, and take me, okay? I'm an anti-Zionist, all right? I don't want Hamas to destroy Israel. I don't want Jerusalem to be bombed. I don't want Iran to shoot missiles all over Israel, killing the civilians. I do not want that. Right. So now somebody's going to take a survey and say, Yaakov Shapiro supports Israel. No, I do not support the ideology of Israel as a Jewish state. I do not support what they are. I want Israel to become Herzlstan and become a one-man, one-person state, separate church and state, and become like the United States of America. I want Benjamin Netanyahu to go to the United Nations and say, how do we get out of this mess? I do recognize a security issue if they try to do that, but they should try to do something about it. I am an anti-Zionist, okay? But let's not take, those are the Satmar Hasidim. Now let's take the non-Hasidic. Let's take the institutes of higher learning where Judaism is really expounded. The largest yeshiva, the largest institute of higher learning, post-secondary in the world is a large Jewish, they call it university, but we call it yeshiva, in Ocean County, New Jersey. Tell you what happened recently, just recently, like last month, there were the Zionists have, besides the state of Israel and their politicians, there's something called the World Zionist Organization, which was started by Herzl because Israel believes that they are the state of all the Jews all over the world. Right. And even though I, as a Jew, do not have a right to vote in Israel, I have no right to decide what they do politically. I have no say in the matter. So instead, they made something called the World Zionist Organization, where Jews outside of Israel have a budget. There's like, I think, $1 billion a year or something. And they get to determine where that budget is spent on what causes. And they have political parties. Now, the difference between the Israeli government, and this is key to understanding this, and the World Zionist Organization, that the Israeli government is not officially a Zionist organization, meaning there are Arabs in the Israeli government, right? There are Arab parties. There were, right? And the reason they're there, even though they're not Zionists, even though they don't believe in Israel, is to protect the interests of their population, their constituency, right? That's why they're there. They're not there because they're Zionists. They're there in order to protect their constituents, a parliament, a government of anywhere, of Nazi Germany. If the Jews would have been able to be in the parliament of Nazi Germany, there could be an argument made that that would be a good thing. So they could have a vote and prevent oppression of Jews there, correct?
Yeah,
To oppose,
but the Arabs are ignored in the Knesset.
I know that, but that's because the other people in the government ignore them. What I'm arguing is that the Arabs would want to be not ignored. The Arabs the Arabs want a voice in the government, not because they're Zionists, but because they're anti-Zionists and because they want to protect their constituency from the Zionists, right? So being part of the Israeli government does not imply, there's an argument that could be made both ways. And I know both the Arabs and the Haredim have people on both sides of this argument. An argument could be made that being part of the Israeli government is tacit approval of Israel, of said government, or an argument could be made, like those Arabs who want more of a voice, that being part of the Israeli government isn't tacit approval of anything. It's only tacit approval of your population's interests. Right. The Haredim are the same. This World Zionist Organization, however, is made only for Zionists. It doesn't represent the population. You need to actually sign that you're a Zionist. Wow. Okay? Now, there's a campaign recently, starting 200, and every 5 years they have elections. In 2005, was just recently, there was elections in America. In other countries, the elections are still going on for this World Zionist Organization, for this $1 or $2 billion budget or something that's going on, that's divided up. And there were Orthodox Jews, similar to me, but much more left-wing, much more Zionist, that said, we're making a party and we're having the regular ultra-Orthodox Jews. We're not promoting Zionism. We're not. We want to use money the money that they have, this big budget, to protect our interests, right? Mm-hmm. The largest schools, 99% of the Haredi rabbis said it is prohibited. It is, quote, in Hebrew, Aveira chamura ma'od, 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 a very, 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 very severe sin to join any Zionist organization, even to sign that you're a Zionist, even if you don't mean it. It is a terrible sin. It destroys your soul, one of them said. And they prohibited all of their students from joining this Zionist organization. I'm going to read you from, and not only that, but there are rabbis who are leaders of political parties in Israel who are in the Israeli government for reasons, like I mentioned, analogous to the way the Arabs are in the Israeli government. I'm reading you an article now from the what is this? The Times of Israel. Okay, the Times of Israel. Rabbi Dov Landau. He is, according to many people, the preeminent leader of Haredi Jewry, not the Hasidim, the ones that are not the Hasidim, okay? There's a quote. In February this year, Rabbi Dov Landau, a leading ultra-Orthodox rabbi, ordered Haredi political parties to refrain from participating in the elections. However, his call went unheeded. So even rabbis who are religious leaders are not necessarily heeded. It doesn't work like the church where you have an official authority. We don't have a pope. We don't have bishops. Rabbis are obligated, and rabbis don't have any additional obligations than regular Jews do, like priests don't marry.
I see your point.
And not only that, but
there is no pope.
There is no, and even in the church, you're talking about what the religious leaders teach. I just gave you an example of a very prominent religious leader teaching something, and the Times of Israel said many people just did not listen because they wanted the money. They just disagreed. Okay, they disagreed with him. He was 1,000% right. From as a rabbi, I can tell you he was 1,000% right ideologically. And there was one rabbi in England that said, no, you can do it. You can go. Why? He says, because there's no Zionism nowadays. Okay, he was wrong. But all the rabbis agreed that it is prohibited to join with Zionists. And 99.9% of them, the religious leaders, said it is prohibited to join a Zionist organization. The Satmar Hasidim are the largest group. No, the left-wing anti-Zionist Jews cannot fill up, nor did they ever, the Nassau Coliseum or the Barclay Center. This is where like the Nets play, okay?
Yeah.
They cannot fill it up with their people for an anti-Zionist rally. These Satmar anti-Zionist Jews can do it like that if they're willing to spend the money. There's a lot of money to rent out these places, right? The largest communities, now the problem is you don't hear about them. Take me, for example. But look, Jamal, your show is wonderful. I was on your show before, okay?
Yes.
But do you see me on mainstream media?
No.
Do you see Piers Morgan inviting me to his show? Do
He
you
will not.
see, what's the name of that guy, that bald guy with the gigantic $1 billion podcast? You know what I'm talking about? Joe Rogan. You see Joe Rogan? Whatever. You see Joe Rogan inviting me to his show. You see NBC, you see Fox News inviting me onto their show. We are ignored. We are ignored. That's why people think that all the synagogues do. There are no synagogues of, very simple. If they're modern Orthodox, they will be Zionist. It's very simple. If they are ultra-Orthodox, they will not. You will not find an Israeli flag in any synagogue filled with people that look like me. Certainly not people who look more religious than me. You will not find an Israeli flag. You will not find any yeshiva, except for the modern Orthodox ones, celebrating any Israeli holidays. In fact, if one student, because people come from all different homes in yeshivas, we're not monolithic, right, tries to do it, they will immediately be scolded and disciplined if they try to do it against the will of the school. On the contrary, if Kim wants, listen, and it's not only her, I don't be against her. She's what?
I think I understand your argument.
I understand.
Kim is fantastic, but your point is, there is no pope, so there is no religious dictate that takes place. Two, the different sects of Judaism.
Except the texts.
There are multiple sects of Judaism, just like Protestant, Christian, or just like Shiite, Sunni, etc. It doesn't necessarily mean one is not the other, or what's the other one? The one that they're murdering in Syria right now. I guess your point is Yeshidi, not Nashidi. It'll come to me in a moment. Your point is they're different sects. You can have Zionism is a sect of Judaism that has added this kind of political flair to it, but that doesn't do anything to the other sects of Judaism.
100%. And I've always said that. I've called them idol worshippers. And not only that, but they themselves claim we're not their brothers if we don't go to the army. They themselves, the Zionists themselves claim this. And I agree, we're not brothers. We're not brothers. They are Jews in the sense they're obligated to repent, just as the idol worshippers in the days of the Bible were obligated to repent, right? They are idol worshippers. They are pork. They are the same thing. Imagine there would be a Jewish sect that this, and it doesn't matter. Besides the fact we were here first, the Zionists came. And if somebody wants to say Judaism evolved, yes, there's another sect. There were once Sadducees that didn't believe in the oral law. Christianity was once a sect of Judaism. And I hope that just like Christianity broke off from Judaism, the Gospels were Jews, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. The Gospels were all born Jews, correct? Paul, Matthew, these were Jews. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert in Christianity.
First Testament, right?
Okay. But they then broke off and became a different religion, right? And even now, I was on a Christian podcast about Zionism, and the lady in Canada, I had mentioned this, something about the Christians created a new religion, and the Zionists, so she corrected me. She said, according to Christianity, Christianity is not a different religion than Judaism. It's the fulfillment of Judaism.
Ouch.
Okay. Ouch. You know what? I have no problem with that. Let the Christians say that. By the way, the JPPI, the Jewish Public Policy Institute, made a survey, which I have in front of me. It's the Jewish Agency is a think tank today in Israel. The difference between, listen to this, the Haredim and Haredim, like people like me, and the ones that are not, okay? And they said that the difference between the Haredim and the Zionist Jews or the non-religious Jews is not only regarding the difference of religiosity, it's regarding Jewish identity itself. And they describe the difference between my version of Judaism and the less religious version of Judaism, including the Zionists. almost the exact same way as the difference between me and this Christian woman. They said that the Haredim believe that Zionism is a replacement for Judaism, a replacement religion. The Zionists believe, or the less religious believe, that is a fulfillment of Judaism. Now listen to these numbers. This is in Israel. The nature of these differences can be seen. This is 2018, this was taken. The nature of these differences can be seen in their different responses to the question, does the term Zionist describe you accurately? Only 9% of Haredim answered that the term describes them very accurately, and 24% said that it describes them somewhat accurately. That's 33% in total at all. Now, Zionist could mean you love the land of Israel and all sorts of things. No matter how you cut it, no matter how you interpret it, 9% said that it describes them very accurately, and 24% somewhat. Among Datiyim, that means just religious Jews, not Haredim. They're like less. In contrast, 95% said that the term describes them very or somewhat accurately. The difference reflects the fact that religious Zionists, in their own way, support Zionism as a transformative and redemptive project, while Haredim tend to reject it, parentheses, while retaining some nationalistic right-wing orientations. But it's a different religion, Zionism. And I wish that Zionists would go the way of the Christians. And I literally said it a month ago in a rally in Manhattan. Again, take a look at Katie Halper's podcast. I think I'm 7th or 8th most popular views in her history. Well over 300,000 views. I said, the prophet Elijah told the idol worshippers in his days, if you want to worship idols, leave Judaism alone. If you want to be a Jew, leave idol worship alone. I say the same thing to Ben Gvir. He was then in America, if you remember. I said the same thing to Ben Gvir. If you want to be a Zionist, don't keep Shabbos. Eat some pork. Those were my words. Leave Judaism alone. If you want to be a Jew, then repent. We welcome you with open arms if you repent, but leave Zionism alone. And I wish that the Zionists will go the way of the Christians and just break off from us.
Rabbi, they don't want to do that. It gives them a certain power to be able to say, we are Jews and we are Zionists. And these
but
two
I
things
don't want to
exactly
be their human shields. It gives them the right to say Judaism evolved. It gives them the right to say that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. But because I say Judaism did not evolve, there is a break-off group. Because I say anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, I would love them to either repent or break off. Those are the two things that I would like them to do. Preferably repent, let them become anti-Zionists. But if they insist on being Zionists, let them go.
Something else. Rabbi, I love that last quote. I don't want to be their human shields. I don't want to be there. I love that. Because that's what it is, right? When they stand up and say,
what it is. I'm their human shields.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
The Jews in Iran now are in terrible danger, both because of Israeli bombs and because of possible political fallout.
Rabbi, thank you for this. And by the way, like I told you, I agree with your premise right off the bat. I disagree with Kim on that.
I disagree with her. She was wonderful. She really was.
She's fantastic. I love her.
She's wonderful. In general, she's wonderful. I just think she's wrong about this.
Yeah. Thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. Great breakdown, by the way. I always love you on this show because you're very informative when you explain whatever you're talking about at that particular moment. Fantastic breakdown.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You be safe, okay? Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, John.
All right. We have come to the end. I would like to thank Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. He is awesome. Author, obviously, Rabbi. He always gives good breakdowns in anything that we're having a conversation with. I haven't had him on in a while, so I had hit him up, I think it was last week, and he was going to be available today. I did not know that Kim was going to be on the show. It just so happened that it ended up that